Well, greetings, visitors to the paper prison. It is I, your host, the Comics Prisoner. And I want to thank you again for taking the time out to come seeing me during these visiting hours. It does relieve the monotony of the solitary confinement, and I really do appreciate it. Um, I just want to get ahead of things right now and say I know this show is going to be a day late and a dollar short because this is our 4th of July, 250th anniversary show of the Comics Prisoner. And um, as always, we're going to be looking at that celebration through my idiosyncratic lens of comics fandom and comics art appreciation. So, why don't we just get right to it? Okay, well, comic books and America has always had a very interesting relationship because comics are a uniquely American art form. That is an art form we made here ourselves. It did not come across the waters on the Mayflower. When I was coming up, I always understood that the two original American art forms were jazz and comic books. Now, in the middle 80s, SF writer Harlan Ellison purported that there were five American art forms, unique American art forms. There was jazz, comic books, the banjo, the mystery novel a la Edgar Allan Poe, and the musical comedy. Now, I would not debate Mr. Ellison. He's much more of a literary genius than I, but I do have a little problem with that list. First off, I don't think of the banjo as an art form. I think of it as a musical instrument. Um, the mystery novel of Edgar Allan Poe, I think, shares enough DNA with Frankenstein by Mary Shelley that I just don't know if we can lay claim to that. And as far as the musical comedy, I just can't believe there wasn't any plays that didn't have music, especially in France. But maybe I'm not going to fight it. I'm just saying, for me, the official list is still jazz music and comic books. Now, let's go on the history a little bit. As people like to say, there was first the gag cartoons, the one panel strips, and then there became the comic strips that were like three or four panels that told a story, sequential art. And then those were collected to make the first comic books in 1933-34. Um, it was Fabulous Funnies. I think the fellow that would go on to make DC Comics or National Publications, which I can't remember his name, he was like the Mage or something, um, started Fabulous Funnies, which was just reprinting old comic strips in the form of comic books. In the 1939 World's Fair, the art form was so popular that there was a special Fabulous Funnies for the 1939 World Fair. So eventually, all that printed material got used up, and we needed original material. And more comics, original comic books started to pop up. The most famous one, of course, was um, the Superman comic, which debuted in Action Comics, created by Siegel and Schuster, two immigrant boys who, grabbed onto the American dream and, warts and all. And what's funny is that comics often became very prescient on what was going to happen in the world because the people who were making them were, smart people. They had their ear to the grindstone. They knew what was going on. So it's always interesting to me that Captain America #1 was published before the U.S. actually entered World War II. Funny because on the front cover, you have Captain America punching out Hitler before we were actually in war with him. Uh, the people could see what was coming. And yeah, everyone with when I was growing up, I just assumed that our entry into World War II is what created Captain America as a property, as a concept. But it was already created. We Jack Kirby and Joe Simon saw what was coming down the pike, and they again were very prescient. And then we went into the 1950s, and comics, of course, was just in the middle of everything. There was the McCarthy scare, and that kind of paranoia bled all over into American society. So we had this guy, Dr. Frederick Wortham, who wrote a book called Seduction of the Innocent, who his big selling point was that comic books was the major contributor to juvenile delinquency. And all parents loved that idea because parents can never control their kids and they're always looking for an excuse aside from their own parenting skills. So, of course, the comics became the new scapegoat and they were demonized and put into the ghetto. And I always find this funny because around this time, because every time America makes a new innovation, it seems like other countries are the one that really jump onto it, that really want to, be the first adopters and really like almost do a lot of the further development and really leverage it for all it's worth. I mean, I look at how Japan grabbed onto, American electronics and, made them smaller and more portable and such it was with comics. While in the 50s, comics were being, basically put in time out, other countries just jumped on it. And most of you know the strips I'm talking about. I mean, we can look at the Blue, Blueberry and Arzac from France, Akira from Japan, the works of Esteban Maroto in Spain, and the many, many strips and comics from England, and Ranxerox from Italy, and so many more. Those countries loved our invention, our art form, our created art form of comics, and they just did so much with it. Uh, and It's always very ironic that sometimes other countries love what we make more than we do. And also, those other countries, the comics created superstars like Mobius and Esteban Maroto and Alan Davis and Paolo Ulitteri Cipieri and so many others who eventually came over to America to want to work in American comics. Um, it's really wonderful. And finally, a thing that I really love about comics is that comics has always been the gateway drug for reading for a lot of young boys, which would not feel up to checking out Wuthering Heights or even War of the Worlds. Especially in the 70s, when the next generation of creators really started taking root. I joked that Marvel Comics were being written by a bunch of failed paperback novelists back then, but they were bringing things to the art form that were never brought there before. They were raising the bar. Uh, Stan Lee made literary allusions here and there where he felt he could, but his bosses still thought comics were being made for 7 and 8 year olds. The guys in the 70s knew that a lot of college students were reading comics. I think it helped young boys who thought reading was kind of nerdish, had them be that stepping stone to reading, and thereby their intelligence was enriched. Well, here we are on the 250th anniversary of this country, and to quote Winston Churchill, democracy is the worst government of all, except for all the others. It's not perfect, but that's because everyone's trying to be represented. One thing a little epiphany I came upon recently while watching the John Adams miniseries on HBO is that America was founded by educated men. For the most part, except for maybe, the colonies here in like Canada, all the other countries are so old that when they were founded by primitive or early man. Now they progressed, they developed, they educated themselves, but in the beginning, they were just flying by the seat of their pants. Our country was created by educated, intelligent men who sat in a room and debated things about the rights of the citizen, not the rights of the king. And that's the kind of country that could make the original American art form of comic books. Happy 250th anniversary, America. You've come a long way, baby. There's some more I think I would like to say about the original art form of comic art and comic books, but I think I'll save that for next time. I want to say, I hope everyone had a great 4th of July holiday and a great 250th celebration. I also hope that you'll like, share, and subscribe and tell all your friends. And until next time, bye bye and bye comics.